mystery and myth about golden section, and the shape itself feels right, looks good. As soon as in the mark you use components that look good, you get the overall result is going to be good also. So if you have imperfect spiral or imperfect shapes, the mark is going to look imperfect in the end. For more complex marks, I prefer to do gridding afterwards because the components of it are much complicated, so it's quite hard to do grids beforehand. Each time I'm presented by opportunity to have a spiral used in the mark, I prefer to use a spiral in correspondence to a golden section. Now I'll show you some examples of how golden section spiral can be applied to the work. Usually in architecture the golden ratio is used, which is 1.618. In my case, I love the shape of the golden spiral. I just use it whenever I can. So for example, in a swan mark I did a year ago, when opportunity presented itself in a neck part, I appropriated the golden section spiral into it. Also, I appropriated the golden section around the mark, and the ratio of the mark is also in accordance with the golden section. Also here, the beagle mark presented itself a lot of opportunities for gold section in the ear part, in the tail part, the leg part, and nose part. So I appropriated it into it, and the result was very golden sectioned beagle, while when you don't have grids on it, you cannot really notice that golden section is used. So, but as soon as you put something over the grid over it, you see how golden section heavy it is. In nature, you get a lot of examples of golden section. For example, the eye of the great white owl eye socket is almost exactly in correspondence with the gold section spiral. And owl generally is one of the most golden section-y, if I may call it, bird out there. Also here you can see in the motion, owl gets this gold section dynamic. Even the wing part also has the same dynamic. For our next exercise, we're gonna design an animal mark, Bulldog in particular. To begin with, we're going to find a great reference image, and we will need a tracing paper and a pencil to do some sketches over our reference image. So let's get started. So this is our reference image for our next project. It's going to be a bulldog where, as I always suggest, the silhouette must be clear, so the overall shape of the mark already makes the animal or the object recognizable. If you're making a mark of a rare animal, it's very hard to find the correct reference. Birds like owls or eagles, storks, they have thousands of images of them, and it's easy to find the right reference right away. But rare animals, rare photos, it's hard to find a nice reference for them. Dogs usually are very easily found, and they usually have good references. And always try to get either silhouette where you have a two-dimensional silhouette of the animal, or 2/3 of the animal is visible. It's rarely animals become recognizable if you look at them from top, especially animals that are mammals. The spirals and golden section opportunities present itself more when you have a side view of an animal. Please browse through the web, find your favorite animal, get a nice one reference picture that you will work with, or if you get two reference pictures and if you're comfortable with it, you can combine parts of the references or ideas from one reference you can combine to the next reference. So we're gonna print this out and start to put tracing paper over it and start making some sketches. So why do preliminary sketching? Always bear in mind that sketching is a must process, because unless you're enormously talented and you can get the ideas of the form as soon as you look at it, sketching allows you to explore, discover new things in the form. So it's pretty much the exercise that gets you better acquainted with the form itself. So in our case, we have to look at the Bulldog and try to discover where the golden section can be appropriated, where the circle or other shapes can be appropriated, and while doing sketches, those discoveries will come to you. So pretty much I will lay down my printed out reference, put the tracing paper over it, and just let my pencil run. As you can see here, I made the capsule shape in place of a head. See if that's gonna do any justice in future. In my second sketch, I found out that the body and the neck part can be just unified into one circle. So that's gonna be a discovery that I'm gonna use in future, and it already gives me a good foundation for eventual gridding. The front leg part also presents itself in a round geometric shape. Hind legs also present itself as within the round gridding shape. While sketching, I'm looking for opportunities to simplify the form. Sometimes it's gonna be a circle, sometimes it could be a square, but more I explore, more opportunities I find, and more places I find where I can do simplification. For example, here I try to unify the front leg with the head part, see if that presented any opportunity. If it does, in future I'm gonna exploit it. Okay, here I've made a sort of a breakthrough when the face part was simplified enough, so I got this one line that represents the face, and it still makes it recognizable as a Bulldog. And I modified the leg part a little bit so it stands stronger. And then I poured some color in it, so I know that the bottom part is going to be darker and the light source is going to be from top. As always, I advise to think geometry. When you look at the shape, think geometry, and if you see complex form or area, try to appropriate some form, because there's only a few forms you can incorporate. As I said earlier, either it's circle or an ellipse or a spiral in the fluid and more organic forms. So combining these three forms, you can get the whole logo finished. So think in terms of circle, ellipse, spiral. After several tries, this is the image that I feel most comfortable with. I'm gonna take a photo of it, import it into an Illustrator, and try to do the outline and pay attention where I can incorporate golden section. So please grab a pen tool and try to use as little anchor points as you can. Don't worry about how perfect the shape is. We will adjust it afterwards anyways. Just click through, nice and easy. Try to be as close as you can to the reference image. And already I can tell here that the golden section spiral shape presents itself. Also, there are some opportunities in the leg part. So we got our outline. Let's copy it. Put some color. Okay, moving on, I'm gonna try to perfect the shapes that are obviously not in line. And we're doing it very rough now. We'll do the more precise gridding in the end. This is just to get the overall shape right. So pretty much the most process is based on trial and error. See if something works. If it doesn't work, go back to the previous image, and that's what's good about simple marks, that you don't have too much anchors to work with. So if you move one up, another down, you have to do it enough times until you get the shape right. Always look at your mark from far during the process. Don't get lazy on that, because it really has to work while it's small. But now I'm just doing a general shape, just general outline where I feel that mark is right, then I'll do gridding to make it more perfect. So this is just a rough sort of computer sketch. Now we will need the golden spiral for this exercise. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it real quick golden spirals. Spiral. I've attached the golden spiral Illustrator file so you can download it and paste it to your design so you don't have to redo it. So this is the moment that all of us have been waiting for. I'm about to start gridding. The mark is already in a condition where I can comfortably get into it. Some would say it's 80% done, 90% done, and this gridding part will add that extra edge to it, so it's to its 100%. So as a first step, I would advise you to import the golden section spiral onto your work and try to look at your mark and see some points where you can put that golden section over and assimilate it to the golden section. For example, in our case, the upper part of the stomach gives a very good opportunity. The front part of the face also. Just put the spiral over it and rotate it, adjust the sizes so it match it as close as you can to the shape itself. There's also, you have to examine other parts also where you can put the circle or ellipses in. For example, in the shadow part of the leg, and the ear, and in the tail part. So those are all the good spots where circle could be appropriated. Well, you don't need too many grids on top because it makes image too complex, and you will have hard time to get your ways around it. It might get too confusing. So put whichever you feel is necessary, whichever feels right at first, and you can add, after cleaning some extra parts up, you can add some more, or you can always add it after you start joining it, so it's never too late to add grids. So just take it easy at first, and if you need some more, you can add it eventually. If you can, it's better if you use the same size circle and with same scaling, because it makes mark more simple. But if the background shape, if it's too different than a background shape, whatever the initial sort of Illustrator sketch requires, if you want to grid it, it's more important to have a good solution maintained rather than have it nicely gridded. So if the background design requires some adjustment in scaling, you should go ahead and do it. But if it's very close, I would suggest you to use the same size circles all the way around, so you keep mark more simple. So occasionally I go to wireframe you to make sure that the lines are close, very close to each other. We should bear in mind that when we do design, when we do logo design, and if client asks for something nice, welcoming, you should always consider designing with rounder shapes, because rounder shapes have more cozy and nice feel to it. Don't get the grids scare you. It might be a little bit intimidating when you see a lot of graphic lines that are interconnected, intertwined. In reality, if you want, you can use very few gridding elements, like couple circles at couple points. I mean, it's not necessary to completely grid your mark all the time, even though I do suggest that most of the times you have to, it'll be nice if you could grid it completely, but don't let it scare you. It's eventually, when you get the good feel what grid is, you'll have far easier time doing it, and far more courage also. Precisely when it gets too complicated, where there's too much grid points on the mark, that's when it's good time to stop, cut it, make some cutting, clean it up, and then you'll see if there's some points you want to add more, which we're going to do eventually, and just when it's too much, you have to stop, cut it, then add more if it's necessary. So initial part of the gridding is done. It feels at the point where I can start cutting and joining shapes. At this point, we're ready to start cutting the shapes, but at first I'm gonna realign all the shapes and adjust them so I don't have those minor inconsistencies. Command Y is a very important shortcut, because you see a sort of a skeleton of the form and you get a better idea what the vector and what the direction of those lines are that you're cutting. Always bear in mind that initial Illustrator sketch that you're doing the gridding on is more important than grids itself. So make sure that all the shapes are as close as you can to the original form. Wherever you can, you have to adjust the shapes so they touch each other or almost touch each other, or at least cut it in a way that the direction of the cut will smoothly connect to the next shape you're gonna cut. And I'm gonna move the Bulldog to the background shape to another layer. Because sometimes I will need to see it, sometimes I will need to turn it off. And now I'm gonna start cutting the grid points, but firstly I'm gonna save the grid so we can put it over after we're done. You have to always pay attention to what that cutted part is gonna be joined to. So I do like quarter spheres, and in a lot of cases they work very well, and half a sphere, half a circle also works very well, but again, bear in mind that what you're gonna connect the next shape to, that's the point where you want to cut, so the vector and the direction is gonna join the next one smoothly. Same thing here, so I'm gonna just move this over here so we got the similar shapes. Here is a bit tricky. I'm gonna move this here, connect it, and this one gonna increase the size of this a little. Okay, that's good. And I'm gonna take this to our grid layer also and put it there, substitute it with the existing one. If the points are not touching, or if the directions are cut in not right way, after you join all the parts, we'll examine where we have mistakes, and we can always go back or always add new grid points to readjust those small inconsistencies and mistakes. Illustrator doesn't always allow you to snap to certain shapes. But again, don't worry about it. When we'll conjoin the whole form, and if there's obvious mistake, and obviously if the aesthetics are not nice or they don't look good, we can add different shapes of grids and adjust the existing mistake. So in our case, the rear leg, the left part of the rear leg is a more complex shape than any other shapes, because it couldn't be really simplified, even though I tried the shape, but it has a good negative flow to it, but the shape itself is too complex. It involves several spirals and perhaps several ellipses. So at this point, I'm not gonna grid it too precisely, but if I need it, after I do all the cleaning and cutting, I'm gonna add some grids to it afterwards. The one thing that none of you shall forget is that the more time you put into a mark, better it gets. There are some cases, as I mentioned in my previous video, when you get tired, your judgment is not too correct. You get lazy, you convince yourself that the work is good enough, and you want to just send it out to a client, but just stop, back off for a couple of minutes, think about it, rest for a couple hours, look at it again. If you have more time and if your deadlines are not too tight, look at it next day. There is rarely you get a good result if you work for 2-3 hours on the mark. You need at least 8 to 10 hours, even more, to get the form right. That I'm saying on the mediocre forms of mediocre complexity. Some complex marks can take you 4 to 5 full days sketching, executing, and gridding. So more time you put in your mark, in the end it pays off. Well, since during the gridding you adjust sizes of the geometric components of the grid, you tend to lose track of what thickness the lines are. So in the end, just select every grid element and make it into one line thickness, so you can see the flow and you can notice mistakes easier. So now, since we cleaned all the extra elements up, I see some points where I want to add a couple more grid elements. I'm gonna cut those also, and in a couple minutes we'll start joining those parts and getting the whole picture together. Okay, so we're back to our Bulldog, and what I see here, I can add a couple more grid elements as well as in the mouth part and the nose part. And afterwards we'll start cutting them and joining them all together. So let's see here. The circle could be added for this leg, rear leg, join. Also here I can add one more circle. Or maybe an ellipse because the shape is a little elliptical. I could add one here too, but I would have far easier time just joining this two, and it's not 100% necessary in this case. But we definitely need lines here. And here also I could add a circle. Let me try if it fits. Okay. Into wireframe mode. So I could just drive this into here. So I guess this could work. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it like this. And this neck part is easy. I will want to add a little part over here afterwards. Here we can add a quarter circle. And of course the nose. And in the case of nose, I'm just gonna use existing shape that I already put in the initial design. Okay, and just color it same as our grids are. So this is pretty much it. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just grab those extra new grid points. Now we're gonna cut those up again. This one is tricky, so as I said earlier, the vector of it should connect to the next point, so I think the line will go similar to this trajectory, so it's gonna connect right here. So I'm gonna cut it, and similar to this, it's gonna go to this trajectory, and I'm gonna cut this one right here. Okay, and here we're gonna get this quarter circle. I'm gonna save the file and start joining the parts. Now I'm gonna keep the background image because I need some reference for this part, and also eyes. So let me copy this real quick, just in case something goes wrong, so I can go back to the original. Oh yeah, let me cut this real quick. Okay, now we're gonna start joining. So locking the background layer so it doesn't interfere, and just with the anchor tool, just with the pen tool, just start joining the designs. Zoom in if it's too far. From here I'm just gonna improvise, move it to here, and just join it here. You see it gave me a little bump here, so I'm gonna undo this and try to move this anchor point a little bit up. Imagine that the direction of this will go towards this trajectory, so if I'll drop the anchor here somewhere, then I'm gonna get the cleaner joint. But here I don't like this angle, but I'm gonna adjust it afterwards. Let's join those parts. Here also we're gonna improvise, move it up, put it here and here. I'm gonna fix this eventually also. Let's do the neck part. Here we got the weird edge. I'm gonna move this up now so it's more aligned with the snout part, and just increase the curve a little so it's more smooth. and the ear part. And this is the tricky part, I'm gonna adjust it afterwards. So here we are on this part. Got snapped nice and easy, but I'm gonna try to move this down a little and smoothen this up a little bit. When you do this, try to make sure that it doesn't influence your original shape. So at some points it might go off, but if you look at it carefully, it will stay at the original form regardless how you move it. Double check if everything is joined. Okay, and now the eye part. I think we're good to go. So everything is joined at this point. Now we're gonna move it aside, fix those small things, and then pour color in it, and put the second color that we have it aside on our main board, so we get the final result. At this point we're close to it, and the logo is looking good as it is, but I'm still gonna copy it and see what more fine-tuning it needs. If you feel like you have to take a rest, just go out for a couple hours, maybe half hour or so, and just come back to it and look at it again, so you have easier time to find those little mistakes. So I'm gonna just copy this again. So as I was suspecting, the snout part is a little bit too extruded, and the mouth part is not quite, doesn't feel quite right. So I'm gonna take a few more minutes to fix those up, and then we'll call it done. So what I'm gonna do now is just get rid of this couple anchors here and see how it looks. Also, I got this extra one here. I'm gonna, oh, it's actually, that feels a bit more appropriate. And I'm just gonna disregard the existing grid, and I'm just gonna, by my hands and eyes, just correct this and make it a bit shorter. Now it feels a teeny bit better. And this back part also, there's this weird edge here. I'm gonna try to adjust it. There's probably 2 anchor points here joined together. I'm gonna move it up or move it down, get rid of it, highlight it, push this button so it's smoother. Now the transition is a bit more smoother. I know we lost that initial grid of the ellipse, but this way it's smoother, so I'm not gonna sacrifice the design because of the grid. Gonna just move it a little bit up. At this point, if you feel that something is not correct, or the flow is not nice. For example, in this part right here, the flow is not too nice. And also here we have to adjust the flow, and maybe a couple other spots. Here I see there is this little indent. You will have to use your hand-eye coordination and just adjust it and disregard the grids you used before, because those are minor imperfections. If you put more time in appropriating grid to the initial shape, you will not have those cases, but here there are a couple slip-ups, and I'm gonna fix them. So here I'm gonna move this out of my way and get rid of this one anchor. And still I got this little angle here. I'm gonna highlight it and make it a little bit more smooth. And now it's much smoother. And also here, I could add another grid point, but since we're almost done and it's easy to fix it with eyes, I'm just gonna move it up. Get rid of this point. Get it back. Try not to lose that vector, and make it a bit more smoother. Let's see how it looks. It's much better. Now this one also, since I made that adjustment, it required to get some more smoothening, and here with one push of a button, it's already better. Now let's see some other parts. The head part. I'm just gonna get rid of it altogether because it feels extra, and add a little bit more leverage here. So now it's far smoother. And final and more or less obvious one is the tail part, where we got this little indentation here. I'm just gonna drag this out while making sure the top part of gridding is not lost. So now it's much smoother. And if you're real OCD, you will notice other small inconsistencies here. So feel free to get into it. For example, here, this part was not gridded, and it is obvious. That's why it's so lacks smoothness. I'm gonna just adjust it to my liking. And perhaps a little bit here. Okay, now the flow is very nice, and the ear part would be another one. I'm gonna just adjust it a little bit without losing that initial grid that I had. Okay, and here also we didn't have gridding, that's why this form is not too complete. There is some extra anchors. Oops. Much better. So at this point, have a close look to your work and make sure it's firstly very fluid. There are no weird angles and things that do not please the eye. Also look into the negative space and see how negative space is flowing. Same there, make sure that there's no minor imperfections. Also make sure that you don't have extra anchor points, because in reality extra anchor points are the ones that make mark more complex and shape less fluid. So get rid of all the extra anchor points, and basically that's it. You're good to go. So at this point, the mark is good as it is in black and white, but I still feel there is a little bit of a lack of the volume, and I'm gonna try add some color to it and see if it's gonna bring out more volume and more definition to the shape. Okay, congratulations, we're done. I hope you enjoyed the course. I know it's kind of hard at the beginning, but once you get into it, once you keep practicing it, sooner or later you will get a better feel of it, and generally, eventually you will have hard time not doing gridding. It definitely allows you to finalize the mark and put the final touch on it so it's perfect and ready to go out in the world.